Welcome to Creep to Sleep. Tonight's story is about a boy who keeps waking up tucked in, but he lives alone. Stick around till the end, and if you see it too, comment, "I saw it." Dust-filtered sunlight painted bars across Toby's face. He blinked, the phantom tendrils of a dream still clinging to his thoughts, whispering trees and a garden riotous with phosphorescent fungi. A stretch revealed leaden arms, and then the oddity registered. He was tucked in, the quilt, a time-worn blue affair usually abandoned at the foot of his bed, stretched smooth and firm, reaching his chin. Its edges were tucked with an unnerving precision. Toby's brow furrowed. His parents, sticklers for routine, were already at work, their early morning quiet and the clink of keys a familiar prelude to his day. He was 12, practically grown. They never tucked him in anymore. He shifted, testing the quilt's unyielding grip. This wasn't a careless gesture. It was deliberate, painstaking, like someone had smoothed every wrinkle, ensuring a comforting embrace. A prickle of unease danced down his spine. He cast his mind back to the prior evening, the ill-advised late-night horror flick, the tepid milk sipped before sleep. Had he done it himself? He was often absent-minded, lost in internal landscapes, but he couldn't conjure the memory of pulling the quilt up, of carefully securing its edges. Usually, sleep claimed him in a disarray of limbs and displaced covers. He sat up with a jolt, the movement freeing the quilt. It landed softly in his lap. He scrutinized it, as if searching for a coded message within its stitching. Just a quilt, old, familiar, a crazy quilt of azure remnants sewn by his grandmother long ago. Nothing amiss. He swung his legs over the edge, bare feet meeting the cool floorboards. Silence pervaded the room, save for the distant thrum of the refrigerator. He moved to the window, yanking the cord. Sunlight surged in, banishing the lurking shadows. Outside, normalcy reigned. Birds trilled their songs from the oak. A squirrel dashed across the green expanse, and Mrs. Henderson diligently tended her roses. Everything was impeccably, reassuringly mundane. He pivoted back to the bed. The strangely tucked quilt stood in sharp contrast to the outside world. He attempted to rationalize it away. Perhaps his dad, in a rare display of affection, had popped in before his commute, but his dad was never so meticulous. His blanket application was less a tuck, more a general direction. He wandered over to his desk, where his neglected solar system diorama gathered dust bunnies. He selected a small polystyrene sphere representing Jupiter, turning it over and over in his fingers. Maybe he was imagining things, more exhausted than he realized. He glanced back at the bed. The image burned into his mind. That feeling, the sensation of something amiss, wouldn't dissipate. He couldn't shake the notion that something had transpired during his slumber, something beyond explanation. He attempted to dismiss it, to relegate it to the realm of bizarre, isolated incidents. But the seed of disquiet had taken root, a minuscule yet persistent worry that refused banishment. Resolving to distract himself, he grabbed clothes. Jeans and a t-shirt went on with deliberate speed, avoiding his reflection in the mirror. He didn't want to meet the apprehension he knew resided there. While tying his sneakers, he registered another aberration. His bedroom door, distinctly left ajar the night before, stood closed. Not just closed, but latched. He froze, laces slipping through numb fingers. He hadn't closed it. Ever. He preferred the house's ambient sounds, the muffled television, kitchen noises. A closed door felt isolating. Rising slowly, heart hammering, he reached out a trembling hand and eased the door open. Emptiness greeted him. Silence. Only the grandfather clock's steady tick in the living room broke the stillness. He moved into the hall, senses heightened. He listened, straining to detect any deviation, any trace of another presence. But there was none, just the hushed air of an unoccupied house. Descending the stairs, his footfalls muted by the carpet, he checked the front door, bolted. The back door, leading to the garden, locked, all secure, all normal, yet the sense of being watched persisted, of something lurking just beyond perception's reach. Entering the kitchen, he grabbed a box of cereal. Sugary flakes cascaded into the bowl, rattling against the ceramic. He ate with a mechanical slowness, mind churning. He replayed the morning, searching for a rational explanation. Absent. He had awakened tucked in, the door shut, with no recollection of either. Unease intensified, constricting him. It transcended mere discomfort. It was a primal dread of something unknowable invading his safe world. A growing certainty solidified within him. This was no random event. This was more. Something else. Whispers of doubt. The morning sun, a weak stain bleeding through the blinds, offered no warmth to Toby's core. A familiar dread coiled in his gut as his eyes fluttered open. No need for confirmation. The blanket stretched impossibly tight, a perfect plane tucked with disturbing precision. The sheet, normally a crumpled map of his troubled sleep, lay flat and cold against him. This eerie order, a sinister replay of the previous night, felt amplified by the wan light. He levered himself up, the unnerving stillness of the bedclothes only serving to accentuate the frantic drumming of his pulse. He brushed a hand across the immaculate surface, a shiver skating down his spine. It couldn't be. Not again. He bolted from the bed, ignoring the floorboard's groans. The door latch remained stubbornly fixed. He worried at it, the metal a frigid bite against his fingertips, locked from the outside. Another wave of dizziness threatened to buckle his knees, and he grabbed the desk's edge for balance. The room swam, his cherished space posters warping into grotesque, mocking shapes. He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the rising panic like a riptide. In the bathroom, he splashed icy water on his face, the shock almost welcome. The reflection that glared back was gaunt and ashen, eyes wide with an unnamed terror. He looked like a specter. Breakfast was out of the question. The mere thought churned his stomach. The comforting morning symphony of the kitchen, his mother's humming, his father's rustling newspaper, felt impossibly distant, foreign. He couldn't face them. Not yet. He needed answers. Anything to banish the creeping dread, the feeling of being entombed alive. He cycled through explanations, each more outlandish than the last. Sleepwalking, a first, a prank, by whom and executed with such uncanny silence. All day at school, his mind spun, replaying the mornings like broken records. Focus evaporated. The teacher's voice became a distant, meaningless drone against the cacophony within his head. He felt unreal, observing life from behind an invisible shield. Lunch found him isolated, listlessly pushing food around his plate. His friends, usually a vibrant, boisterous chorus, seemed on another planet. He longed to confide, to share the burden, but the words choked in his throat. How could he verbalize the inexplicable? They'd write him off as unhinged. That evening, hovering in the kitchen doorway as his parents prepared dinner, the words remained leaden in his mouth. He saw the familiar worry lines etched on his mother's face, the weariness that tugged at the corners of her eyes, and the confession withered on his tongue. He couldn't add to her burdens. He watched his father, brow furrowed in concentration as he stirred a simmering pot. He pictured trying to explain the locked door, the impossibly perfect bed. He could almost hear the gentle, dismissive chuckle, the soothing reassurances that it was just a nightmare. "Everything all right, Toby?" His mother's voice startled him. He flinched. "Yeah, Mom. Just hungry. He retreated, the lie leaving a metallic taste. He knew silence couldn't last, yet the fear of ridicule, of being dismissed, formed an impenetrable barrier. He was trapped, a fly ensnared in its own sticky web. As night deepened, he lay rigid in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every creak of the house, every whisper of leaves against the pane, shot a jolt of pure fear through him. He yanked the covers tighter, a futile barricade against the unseen presence that seemed to saturate the very air. He was alone, utterly and devastatingly alone, with his mounting terror. And he knew, with a bone-deep certainty that stole his breath, that dawn would bring the same chilling tableau. The best friend agreement. The fluorescent lights of the school cafeteria buzzed, a soundtrack to Toby's swirling anxiety. He poked at the lukewarm mac and cheese on his tray, the orange glop mirroring the sickly feeling in his stomach. He needed to tell someone, and Maya was the only one he could even contemplate trusting with this weirdness. He watched her navigate the crowded room, a bright splash of color in her tie-dye hoodie. Maya moved with an easy confidence he envied, her laughter a familiar sound cutting through the lunchtime din. He waved her over, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Hey, Space Cadet," Maya said, sliding onto the bench across from him. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Everything okay?" He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. Can I talk to you about something kind of strange?" Maya grinned. Strange is my middle name, although technically it's Elizabeth. But Spill. He took a deep breath. "Okay, so lately I've been waking up different, like my room is super tidy, everything in its place, and I feel tucked in, really tight." Maya raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. "Tucked in? Like your mom's being extra affectionate?" He shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "Number. That's the thing. My parents haven't been in my room at night. I know they haven't." "Maybe you're sleepwalking and doing it yourself," she suggested, her tone still light. "I saw a documentary about that once. This guy built a whole birdhouse while asleep. It's not me, Maya. I know it's not. Everything is too perfect, like staged, and I feel trapped." He pushed the mac and cheese around his plate, the appetite he hadn't really had vanishing completely. And I can't explain it, but it's terrifying." He looked up at her, searching for any sign of understanding. Instead, he saw skepticism warring with concern in her eyes. He braced himself for the inevitable dismissal, the gentle mockery he'd been dreading. Maya was silent for a long moment, studying his face. He could practically see the gears turning in her head, logic battling with the obvious distress etched on his features. "Okay," she said finally, her voice softer now. "Okay, Toby. I believe you're scared." Relief washed over him, so potent it almost made him dizzy. You do?" "I believe you believe it," she clarified. "I'm not saying I think some phantom is tidying your room and tucking you in like a creepy bedtime story, but I see you're genuinely freaked out, and that's enough for me to take it seriously." He let out a shaky breath. "So, you'll help me?" Maya leaned back against the bench, considering. "Look, I'm a science person. I believe in logic, evidence, and Occam's razor, but I'm also your best friend, and best friends don't let each other go crazy alone, even if it involves imaginary tuck-in monsters." A weak smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "They're not imaginary." "Prove it," she challenged, a mischievous glint returning to her eyes. "Let's figure out what's really going on. We'll be like paranormal detectives, but with better snacks." "So what do we do?" He felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. pushing back the encroaching darkness. "First," Maya said, pulling a notebook and pen from her backpack, "we gather data. We need to know exactly what happens, how often, and what, if anything, triggers it. Tonight, we stake out your room." Toby blinked. "Stake out? You mean you'd stay over?" The thought of not being alone when it happened, if it happened, was incredibly appealing. "Yep. Operation Tuck-in Interception is a go. I'll bring the caffeine and you bring the creepy, tidy room." She grinned, a flash of her old confidence. "And don't worry, Toby. We'll get to the bottom of this, one way or another." Whiskers the suspect. The following evening, armed with Maya's dad's binoculars and a shared bag of salt and vinegar chips, Toby and Maya hunkered down in Toby's room. Dusk painted the walls in shades of lavender and gray. Whiskers, a fluffy Persian with a perpetually disgruntled face, sauntered in, tail held high like a question mark. "All right, Operation Tuck-in Interception, Phase 2, Feline Focus," Maya whispered, adjusting the binoculars. "Let's see what Mr. Whiskers is up to." Toby chewed his lip, his gaze fixed on the cat. "He's always around. I just never thought. Maybe he's been doing it all along." Whiskers, oblivious to their scrutiny, hopped gracefully onto Toby's bed, kneading the duvet with his paws. A low purr vibrated through the room, a sound that usually soothed Toby, but tonight it only amplified his anxiety. "He's inspecting the scene," Maya commented, scribbling in her notebook. "Note the meticulous paw action, possible evidence of blanket manipulation training." Toby snorted despite himself. "Seriously? He just likes the duvet. He does that all the time." For the next hour they watched Whiskers. He napped, he preened, he batted at a dust bunny drifting across the floor, but he made no attempt to tuck in any blankets. He did, however, manage to knock Toby's favorite model airplane off the bedside table. Okay, maybe he's not a blanket-tucking mastermind," Maya conceded, lowering the binoculars, "but we can't rule him out completely. We need more data." "Data?" Toby echoed, picking up the pieces of his airplane. "What kind of data?" "Practical data," Maya declared. "Let's see if he's even physically capable of tucking you in." Toby stared at her. "You want to test his tucking abilities?" Maya grinned, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Exactly, come on." She carefully scooped up Whiskers, who responded with a protesting yowl. Toby winced. He loved Whiskers, even if the cat was a bit of a jerk sometimes. "All right, Whiskers," Maya said, holding the cat aloft. "Show us what you've got. Demonstrate your tucking prowess." Whiskers, clearly unimpressed with being used as a furry puppet, wriggled in her grasp, his claws extended just enough to make Maya yelp. "Okay, Plan B," she said, gently placing Whiskers back on the bed. "We'll try a more collaborative approach." Toby sat on the edge of the bed, pulling the duvet up to his chest. Maya positioned Whiskers near his side. "Okay, Whiskers," she instructed. Tuck Toby in." Whiskers blinked at her, then nonchalantly began licking his paw. He then proceeded to rub his face with it, thoroughly cleaning every nook and cranny. "He's grooming," Toby observed dryly. "I don't think he understands the concept of tucking." Maya sighed. "Maybe if we guide him." She gently took Whiskers' paw and attempted to maneuver it towards the edge of the duvet. Whiskers promptly pulled his paw away and glared at her. "Nope," Maya said, releasing him. "He's not having it. And honestly, look at him, Toby. He's like, 10 pounds? How's he supposed to lift the duvet, let alone tuck it in neatly? And those claws, they're designed for shredding, not smoothing." Toby looked at Whiskers, who was now curled up in a ball on his pillow, purring contentedly. He had to admit, Maya had a point. Whiskers was many things: a cuddler, A hunter of rogue dust bunnies, a connoisseur of catnip, but a meticulous blanket tucker he was not. "You're right," Toby conceded, a wave of relief washing over him. "It can't be him. He's too clumsy." "Exactly," Maya said, snapping her notebook shut. "Whiskers is innocent, case closed. Now about those chips." As they munched on the remaining chips, Toby couldn't shake the feeling that they were back at square one. If it wasn't Whiskers, then what was going on? The mystery of the nightly tuck-ins remained unsolved, a chilling question mark hanging over his head. Strange gifts. Dawn unveiled another unsettling anomaly. Toby, still wrestling with the remnants of sleep, swung his legs off the mattress. His foot struck something on the floor, a smooth, cool stone, perfectly spherical and gray. It was foreign, not one of the jagged, colorful souvenirs from family vacations that constituted his rock collection. An almost calculated placement sent a shiver of unease tracing its way up his spine. A cursory scan of the room revealed nothing else amiss. He pocketed the stone, haunted by the feeling it was a significant, if indecipherable, sign. The following sunrise heralded a different sort of enigma, a desiccated bloom resting on the rug. Delicate and purple, its papery petals whispered of a life long past. He owned no flowers, nor had he acquired any. Where had it materialized from? He'd vacuumed there yesterday, he remembered distinctly. A growing disquiet settled over him. This was more than just tucked-in sheets. This was deliberate gifting. Gingerly he lifted it, the brittle petals rustling softly. A faint, sweet aroma clung to it, a spectral echo of its former beauty. A macabre bookmark, he thought, as he placed it beside his textbooks, chronicling the increasingly strange narrative of his life. He withheld mentioning it to Maya, wanting to discern a pattern or rule out coincidence before facing the possibility of something sinister. The next day erased any lingering doubt. A small, iridescent button graced his nightstand. Its deep blue shimmer recalled old sailor's garb, made all the more unsettling by its 4 holes. 2 acted as eyes, the lower pair a nose and mouth, forming a silent, judgmental face staring back at him. His heart hammered against his ribs. No coincidence could explain this. Someone or something was leaving him these tokens. A cold dread now sat in his stomach. The neatly tucked sheets had been unnerving. These objects felt like a calculated communication, a message. He grabbed his phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Toby, Maya, urgent, not just the tucking anymore." He began to pace, the stone, the flower, the button, a bizarre triptych of unease playing on repeat in his mind. Were they warnings, promises? A wave of nausea threatened. He feared he was losing his grip on reality. Maya arrived, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong? You sounded frantic." Toby indicated the items arranged on his desk. "These, I've been finding them by my bed every morning for 3 days." Maya examined them closely, picking up the stone, her brow furrowed. "Where did they come from?" "Have you seen them before?" "No, that's the problem. They just appear, like the tucking. I'm positive I've never encountered them before." Hysteria edged his voice. Maya held the button to the light. "This is really weird, Toby." She paused, considering. "It's like someone's trying to talk to us in a language we don't understand." "Or marking their territory," Toby blurted, panic rising. "Like a cat." Maya's gaze was filled with concern. "Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to think this through. Are you sure nobody's been in your room? Could it be a prank?" Toby shook his head, vehement. "I lock the door every night, double-check it. And the windows are always sealed. And besides, who would do this?" He gestured to the strange assortment. "These aren't just random trinkets. They feel significant." Maya sighed. Okay, I believe you. What do we do? Toby ran a hand through his hair, his anxiety palpable. I don't know. I'm starting to feel crazy. It's escalating, Maya. First the sheets, now these bizarre offerings. What comes next? His voice broke. I'm terrified. Maya placed a hand on his shoulder, a grounding gesture. We'll figure it out, Toby. We always do. Let's look at what these things could mean. Stone, flower, button. Is there a connection? A symbolic meaning? She paused, thinking. Could they be part of a set? Are things missing? Or does the collection present a picture? They stared at the odd collection, the rising sun painting long shadows across the room. The initial mystery of the tucked sheets had become something darker, more perplexing. The sensation of being watched, a pawn in an incomprehensible game, intensified, suffocating Toby more with each passing day. The camera plan. So, dream catchers, fail. Salt circles, epic fail. Next up, Ouija board. Toby sank lower, the assorted talismans of failed defenses, smooth gray stone, pathetic heather sprig, a lone orphaned button littering the floor around him like fallen soldiers. Maya, perched on the edge of his desk, gnawed her pen, brow deeply creased. We need proof, Toby, something tangible. The pen tapped a staccato rhythm against her pad. Right now, we're hunting phantoms with feelers. What we need is tech. He blinked, uncomprehending. Tech? Like a ghost radar app? She gave him a withering look. No, like a camera. A spark ignited in his eyes. A camera? Seriously? You think we could actually film something? Worth a shot, isn't it? Dad's old camcorder is probably gathering cobwebs in the attic, the one he used to document our family vacations. We could set it up in your room tonight, get everything on tape. The notion hung, a fragile bubble of hope in the heavy air of dread. Toby wrestled with the idea, the prospect of seeing, with undeniable certainty, what transpired while he slept was a siren call, both terrifying and seductive. Perhaps it was just his overactive imagination. Maybe the lens would reveal nothing, exposing the whole thing as a bizarre sleepwalking episode. Or perhaps it would unveil something unspeakable. I don't know, Maya, he breathed, almost inaudible. What if it reveals something awful? She reached for his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Then we face it, together, but at least we'll know the truth. Right now, we're grasping at shadows. This is about reclaiming power, Toby, not allowing this thing to dictate your existence. He met her gaze, unwavering resolve etched on her face, and a flicker of bravery sparked within him. Okay, he said, voice stronger now. Okay, let's do it. Let's use the camcorder. Maya's attic was a museum of forgotten moments. Sunbeams struggled through dusty panes, illuminating motes dancing in the stagnant air as they navigated a maze of discarded keepsakes, faded photo albums, moth-eaten garments, abandoned toys. The scent of aged wood and bygone days permeated the space. Finally, after an eternity of sifting, Maya brandished a bulky, black camcorder. Jackpot, she declared, holding it aloft. The Retrovision 2000, a relic of the past. A wave of apprehension washed over Toby as he took the heavy device. It felt like cradling a fragment of yesteryear, a portal to a forgotten era. He ran his fingers over the cold, unyielding plastic, a nervous tremor in his hands. Back at Toby's, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and gray, they positioned the camcorder in his room. It stood sentinel on a small tripod, its lens trained directly on his bed. Maya tinkered with the settings, perfecting the focus and ensuring the entire sleeping area fell within its gaze. Toby watched, his stomach a knot of nervous energy. All right, Maya announced, stepping back to assess their work. I think we're good to go. Set to record all night. We'll review the footage come morning." The room felt alien with the camera's presence, as though they were under constant observation. A strange tingle traced the nape of Toby's neck, the eerie sensation of unseen eyes. He cast a furtive glance around the room, half expecting to glimpse something lurking in the corners. "Are you sure about this, Toby?" Maya asked, her voice laced with concern. "We can still call it off." He inhaled deeply, meeting her gaze head-on. "Number, we're doing this. I need answers." As darkness descended, enveloping the room in shadow, Toby climbed into bed. Maya offered a reassuring smile, then flicked off the light, leaving only the tiny, accusing red eye of the recording light. Silence descended, thick and oppressive, punctuated only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the clock on his nightstand. "Good night, Toby," Maya whispered from the doorway. "Try to rest." "Good night, Maya," he replied, his voice barely audible. He closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive. His mind whirled, replaying the disquieting events of recent weeks, the unsettling discoveries, the insidious creep of fear. He pictured the camera, silently documenting every nuance of the night, capturing the truth, whatever form it might take. He thrashed, the sheets twisting around his limbs like grasping vines. The camera's red light burned into his consciousness, a relentless reminder of the unknown that awaited. He squeezed his eyes shut, attempting to banish the fear, the anticipation, the nagging premonition that something was profoundly amiss. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him, and he drifted into a restless slumber. Even in the realm of dreams, the red light persisted, an unblinking witness to the secrets veiled within the night. He envisioned shadowy forms, whispers dancing on the periphery of hearing, the unnerving sensation of being tucked in by unseen hands. He dreamt of the truth, lurking just beyond the curtain of sleep, poised to reveal itself. Nothing to see here. A sliver of sun, audacious and probing, sliced across Toby's face. He forced his eyelids apart, that familiar vice grip of anxiety clenching his gut. He was tucked in, again. The bedclothes were smooth and confining, the duvet a deceptively gentle weight. Throwing back the covers, he surged out of bed, an urgent need to review the recording eclipsing everything else. He found Maya already there, perched at his desk, eyes locked on the camcorder. The red telltale light was extinguished. "Anything turn up?" Toby asked, his voice gravelly after a restless, nightmare-haunted sleep. Maya glanced up, a furrow creasing her forehead. "Let's see for ourselves." She plugged the camcorder into her laptop, the screen blooming with light. The initial frame displayed an empty room, softly lit by the glow of Toby's bedside lamp. The digital clock blinked 11:57 p.m. Toby's breath hitched as Maya hit play. He watched his doppelganger climb into bed, fretfully toss and turn for a time, and finally succumb to what appeared to be undisturbed slumber. The camera hummed, compressing the long, soundless hours. He observed his own restless movements, the occasional mumbled word, but nothing beyond that. No spectral forms, no grasping hands, no incident of any kind. The recording concluded at 6:03 a.m., mere moments before the sunrise began its invasion of his window. The screen faded to black. A maelstrom of contradictory feelings churned within Toby, relief at the absence of overt horror on the tape, coupled with a deep, disquieting bewilderment. If nothing transpired, then how could he explain? "Nada," Maya stated, her tone devoid of inflection. "Just you, sleeping like a log." Toby raked his fingers through his already disheveled hair. "But I woke up tucked in, and the door was locked from the inside." I know, Maya responded, her voice gentling. "It's illogical, She replayed portions of the footage, scrutinizing each pixel, each interplay of light and shadow. Maybe it's occurring just outside the camera's view, or perhaps it's so incredibly subtle that the equipment isn't registering it. He collapsed onto the bed, the springs protesting beneath him. So, we're back where we started. Worse, really. Now we have evidence of nothing, despite the fact that something demonstrably is happening. Maya levered herself off the chair and settled beside him. Hey, don't despair. This just means we need to rethink our approach. The camera angle might be wrong. We might need different tech, like night vision or something more attuned to whatever strangeness is afoot. Toby stared blankly at the wall, his thoughts spiraling. He experienced an odd mix of frustration and morbid fascination. He longed to see this end with every fiber of his being, but a part of him was also lured by the enigma, by the unsettling sensation that he teetered on the precipice of discovering something utterly unfathomable. "What about audio?" Maya suggested, jolting him from his reverie. "Maybe there's something we're missing. Ambient static, perhaps? Or some kind of inaudible frequency?" Toby lifted his shoulders in a shrug. "I don't know. I don't detect anything unusual." "Okay, new game plan," Maya declared, her voice regaining its characteristic verve. "Tonight, we redeploy the camera, but we also incorporate a sound recorder, and we'll adjust the positioning, capture more of the room." Toby mustered a feeble smile. "You're really invested in this, aren't you?" "Absolutely. You're my friend, and something seriously bizarre is happening. Besides," she added with a mischievous grin, "it's infinitely more captivating than polynomial equations." He chuckled, the sound feeling rusty and unfamiliar. "Fine, let's do it. But if I end up being possessed by some malevolent entity, I'm holding you responsible." "Agreed," Maya replied, slapping him lightly on the back. "Now, let's locate a sound recorder. I believe my dad has one lurking somewhere in his study." The day unfolded with agonizing slowness, charged with a palpable unease. Toby struggled to focus on anything, his mind constantly reverting to the vacant footage, to the unnerving prickle of being watched, even when supposedly alone. As twilight descended, the familiar dread began its insidious creep, now heavier and more oppressive than before. He felt like a rat in a maze, condemned to eternally re-experience the same nightmarish ritual. The silent bell. The digital recorder emitted a soft, electronic purr, its lone verdant LED the only indication it was even on. The webcam, teetering on a precarious tower of books, remained a dispassionate observer, its lens fixed on the doorway. Toby gnawed at a nail, the faint coppery tang doing little to soothe his fraying nerves. "Ready?" Maya breathed, readjusting the delicate chime suspended from the knob by a strand of gossamer fishing line, a family heirloom filigreed with miniature botanical designs. This tiny bell possessed a singular, almost spectral resonance. Anything breaching that threshold will announce itself. Toby swallowed, his throat constricted. "As ready as I can be." They retreated to the makeshift control center Maya had assembled, a nook near the window in Toby's room, strategically out of the webcam's frame. His laptop displayed the live feed, a frozen tableau of the unyielding portal. The recorder's subtle drone acted as a constant underlying pulse, amplifying the oppressive hush. The initial hour oozed by. Each settling groan of the house, each whisper of wind through the trees outside, sent a jolt through Toby. Maya, ever the pragmatist, logged each auditory event, meticulously noting its timestamp and likely origin in a small notepad. "Just the breeze," she'd offer, or "probably Henderson's feline prowling again." Toby appreciated her attempts at grounding him, but a hard knot of foreboding coiled in his gut. He was gripped by a conviction, defying rational explanation, that this was no mere trick of the wind or neighborhood cat. 2 hours. The laptop's clock ticked with judgmental precision. Discomfort began to gnaw at Toby. Perhaps he was fabricating it all. Maybe he was simply overtired, overwrought, and letting his anxieties run rampant. The chime remained motionless, a glittering miniature indictment of his trepidation. "Maybe," he ventured, his voice uncertain, "maybe we're chasing shadows." Maya frowned, brow furrowed in concentration. "We agreed to exhaust all possibilities. We committed to the entire night." She adjusted the audio input on the laptop. Besides, even if we witness nothing, the audio might capture something imperceptible. He knew her logic was sound, yet the anticipation was draining. He leaned back against the cool wall, briefly closing his eyes. Fleeting images danced behind his lids, the security of childhood tuck-ins, the decisive click of the lock, the smothering sensation of surveillance. Abruptly, Maya inhaled sharply. Toby's eyes flew open. What is it?" She indicated the laptop screen, her finger wavering. "The bell. It's vanished." Toby fixed his gaze on the image. The door remained shut, the fishing line dangling listlessly from the knob, but the silver chime was no longer visible, only bare space. He surged to his feet, heading for the portal. He reached out, his hand hovering above the cool metal, a bizarre cocktail of dread and morbid fascination swirling within him. He eased the door open. Emptiness. The room was precisely as they had left it. The webcam perched on its stack, the recorder's green sentinel still glowing steadily. No trace of the chime, no sign of forced entry, no indication of anything amiss. He searched under the bed, inside the closet, even behind the drapes. Maya joined the hunt, her initial shock giving way to a steely resolve. They ransacked the room, but the chime had disappeared without a flicker. "This defies explanation," Toby breathed, raking a hand through his already tousled hair. "It simply vanished." Maya examined the fishing line, her expression pensive. "The strand isn't severed. It's as if it were delicately lifted free." He stared at the empty line, the implications dawning on him. Something or someone had been present in his room while they stood only feet away, monitoring the door. Something capable of removing a chime without a sound, without triggering an alarm. The lingering disquiet now surged into an icy, debilitating dread. This was no phantom of his imagination. This was tangible, and it was manifesting within his sanctuary. He met Maya's gaze, her face pale but unyielding. "What's our next move?" Her eyes locked with his, and for a fleeting instant he detected a shadow of uncertainty within them. But it was swiftly supplanted by a surge of defiant resolve. "We press on," she stated, her voice quiet but firm. "We unravel this mystery, Toby. We have no choice." Distortion in the dark. Toby bolted upright, his breath snagging on a vice of anxiety clamped around his chest, tucked in, again. Reason dissolved in a surge of pure terror. He fought the suffocating weight of the duvet, a silken shroud spun from nightmare. Slow, measured breaths. He needed to crush the panic clawing its way up his throat. He sat upright, his gaze a frantic dance around the room, locking onto the door. The strip of painter's tape remained undisturbed, but the chime gone. The small silver bell, his fragile early warning system, had evaporated, leaving only the severed thread like a mournful whisper against the tape. He lurched from the bed, his pulse a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. The digital clock glared 6:17 a.m., a silent accusation. He'd heard nothing. The recorder, perched innocently on the desk, remained mute. He felt violated, exposed, as if a phantom hand had reached into the stillness of his room, pilfering a sliver of reality and leaving behind only the hollow ache of its absence. Maya arrived at precisely 3:30 p.m., a bag of Chinese takeout dangling from her fingers. "Brain fuel for the investigation," she declared, her tone a touch too bright, a shade too insistent. He recognized the mask. She was just as rattled as he was, but determined to project strength for both of them. "I don't know if I can keep this up, Maya," Toby admitted, collapsing onto the bed. The sheets felt tainted beneath him, irrevocably strange. "It's escalating." Maya sat beside him, her hand a steady anchor on his arm. "We're in this together, Toby. We'll unravel this. We just need sharper eyes. Let's revisit the footage. With surgical precision this time." They huddled before Toby's laptop, the screen casting an eerie luminescence on their faces in the gathering gloom. The previous night's recording played, a mind-numbing cycle of silent shadows and the constant thrum of static. For an hour they scrutinized, their focus strained, their resolve wavering, until finally, nothing. "Maybe the chime just fell," Toby ventured, a thread of desperate hope woven into his voice. Maya countered, "The tape's still secure, and you tied it on tight, remember?" They rewound, starting anew. Maya indicated the lower right corner where the chime had resided. "Zero in on that sector," she instructed. "Any anomaly, the merest flicker." Another hour seeped away. Toby was teetering on the edge of surrender, his vision blurring with exhaustion, when Maya sucked in a sharp breath. "Hold! Go back! 3 o'clock!" Toby's fingers danced over the controls, settling the footage at precisely 3 a.m. He watched, his breath suspended. At first, nothing. Just the familiar inky blackness of his room, softened by the faint wash of streetlight bleeding through the blinds. Then it bloomed. Near the bed's foot, where the chime had hung, a faint, undulating distortion shimmered into being, subtle, almost invisible, like heat waves rising from asphalt on a scorching day. It pulsed, a tear in the tapestry of the video, lasting mere seconds before dissolving back into the nothingness from which it came. "Did you catch that?" Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Toby could only nod, his thoughts reeling. He replayed the snippet, each iteration solidifying the reality of what he'd witnessed. The distortion existed, an unexplainable anomaly, a hiccup in the digital record of his life. He magnified the area, the pixels fracturing and swirling. Within the hazy shimmer he thought he glimpsed a form, a vaguely humanoid form, indistinct and blurred, as if struggling to solidify from thin air. The shape dissipated an instant before the chime vanished. A glacial dread gripped Toby's spine, unlike anything he'd ever known. This wasn't just his overactive imagination. This wasn't sleep paralysis or stress or some other convenient explanation he desperately embraced. This was something beyond, something alien. "What? What was that?" Toby stammered, his voice trembling like a leaf in a gale. Maya's brow furrowed in tight concentration as she edged closer to the screen. "I don't know," she confessed, her voice laced with apprehension, "but I have a nasty feeling about it." She swiveled to face Toby, her eyes wide with a blend of trepidation and unwavering resolve. "We need to identify it, Toby, and we need to do it swiftly." A shadowy figure. Maya's hands flew across the keyboard, lines of code cascading upwards like a digital aurora borealis. Beside her, Toby sat frozen, his gaze locked on the paused frame, a fleeting anomaly in the security camera's digital mosaic. "All right," Maya breathed, her brow a tight knot of concentration. Let's try to salvage something from this digital wreckage. I'm initiating a deconvolution algorithm. A long shot, I admit, but... The monitor flickered, the image resolving incrementally, then dissolving back into abstraction as she adjusted the parameters. Toby's breath hitched, his pulse hammered in his ears. The air, usually fragrant with raspberry lemonade and the whir of Maya's souped-up rig, now felt heavy, oppressive. Almost there. She strained, her voice barely a whisper, compensating for pixel displacement. At last the picture solidified. Imperfect, yes, but from a mere smeared distortion, something emerged, form. A strangled sound escaped Toby's throat. Stooping slightly, leaning over his bed, was a presence. Shadowy, indistinct, as if sculpted from moonlight and dust. A vaguely humanoid shape, head, torso, limbs ending in slender, almost unearthly hands. One hovered just above his blanket in the act of tucking him in. All the air rushed from Toby's lungs. A wave of cold washed over him, leaving his skin clammy. That's it, he rasped, his voice trembling uncontrollably. That's what's been happening. Maya reached for his hand, her grip a reassuring anchor. I see it, Toby. I see it, she said, her usually steady voice now quivering with a subtle unease. They continued to stare, transfixed by the captured moment of digital dread. The shadowy figure, immortalized in this brief surveillance snapshot, exuded an unsettling stillness. Its features defied definition, a shifting kaleidoscope of light and shadow. Any expression, any purpose remained utterly unreadable. What is it? Toby choked out, his eyes wide saucers. Is it a ghost? Some kind of alien being? Maya offered a slow shake of her head. I don't know, Toby. I honestly don't know, but it's palpable. This isn't a figment of your imagination. It's there, in your room, engaged in that. The sheer nerve of the entity struck Toby like a physical blow. This thing, whatever its nature, was trespassing in his sanctuary, violating his personal space, touching him. The notion sent shivers down his spine. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if every nerve ending was raw. He recalled the comforting weight of the blanket, the subtle pressure, the disquieting sensation of being cared for when utterly alone. It hadn't been a dream, but reality. This thing was real. We have to stop it, Toby declared, a thread of steel weaving into his voice. We need to understand its nature and put an end to it. The tremor hadn't completely vanished, but resolve now eclipsed fear. Maya mirrored his determination with a firm nod, her eyes blazing. You're right. We can't afford to simply be afraid. We need to figure out what we're facing. She magnified the image of the hand suspended above the blanket. Even under magnification, it remained indistinct, a vortex of shadows. But something about it, the very way it was positioned. Look, Maya urged, indicating the screen. The fingers, they're elongated, almost insectoid. Toby strained his eyes, trying to parse the details Maya perceived. He'd been too fixated on the figure's overall form, overwhelmed by the horror of its presence, to register the nuances. Now, studying the enlarged image, he grasped it. The digits were unnaturally long and thin. They lacked the roundedness of human fingers, the curve of fingernails, terminating instead in what appeared to be points. Insectoid, Toby repeated, a fresh wave of revulsion washing over him. The word conjured images of scuttling legs, clicking mandibles, an alien exoskeleton. The thought of some insect-like horror infesting his room, crawling across his bed, bordered on the unbearable. It's just a possibility, Maya said swiftly, sensing his escalating panic. The image remains unclear. It could be anything, but we can't dismiss any potentiality. They stared in silence, the spectral figure looming like a dark omen. The room felt colder, the air thick with unvoiced anxieties. The raspberry lemonade scent seemed saccharine, almost nauseating. The missing chime had nearly slipped his mind. "It absconded with the chime," Toby pronounced flatly, his gaze locked on the screen. "It purloined the chime, and then it tucked me in." A note of kindness. Toby stared at the enhanced image on Maya's laptop, his breath hitching in his throat. The shadowy figure, no longer a blur, loomed over the bed, its elongated fingers, tipped with what looked like chitinous claws, gently pulling the duvet around him. He shivered, not from cold, but from a primal fear that clawed its way up his spine. I can't believe it," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's real." Maya, however, was buzzing with a nervous energy that bordered on excitement. "This is incredible, Toby. I mean, terrifying for you, obviously, but incredible. We have proof, concrete, digital proof. This isn't just a feeling anymore. It's something we can study, maybe even understand." He shot her a look, a mix of fear and disbelief warring in his eyes. "Understand, Maya, it's tucking me in, and it stole my chime. What is there to understand except that I'm being haunted by some shadow monster?" Maya winced. "Okay, bad choice of words, but panicking won't help. We need to think rationally. It's interacting with you, right? It's not just lurking in the corner, it's engaging." She tapped the screen, zooming in on the figure's face, or what little of it was visible. "And it seems gentle, creepy, undeniably, but gentle. The way it's tucking you in, it's almost tender." Toby shuddered. "Tender? Maya, that's even worse. What if it's tenderizing me like a steak?" Maya rolled her eyes, but a small smile played on her lips. "Okay, now you're being ridiculous. Look, we need to figure out what it wants. Why is it doing this? Maybe we can communicate with it." Toby's eyes widened. "Communicate? Are you insane? I'm barely managing to breathe in the same room knowing that thing exists, let alone talk to it." "We won't exactly talk," Maya clarified, already tapping away at her keyboard. "We'll leave a note. A simple, polite note." "A note?" Toby repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "You want to leave a note for the thing that's been creeping into my room at night? Like some kind of weird paranormal pen pal?" "It's worth a try, isn't it?" Maya argued, her fingers flying across the keys. "Ignoring it clearly hasn't worked. Confronting it directly might be unwise, to say the least. But a note, it's low risk. We ask a question, see if we get an answer. If it doesn't work, we move on to something else." Toby remained unconvinced, but he couldn't deny the logic. Doing something, anything, felt better than cowering in fear. "Okay, fine, but what do we even say? Dear Shadow Monster, please stop tucking me in. It's really freaking me out." Maya chuckled. "Something a little more nuanced. How about, why are you here? We're not angry, just curious. Why do you tuck me in?" She paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "And maybe a drawing?" "A drawing?" Toby groaned. "Seriously?" "Yeah, like a peace offering or a visual aid. Maybe it doesn't understand words." She swiveled the laptop around, opening a simple drawing program. "You're better at drawing than me. Can you do a quick sketch of you?" Toby, still hesitant, took the mouse. He drew a simple stick figure with a lopsided smile, then added a speech bubble. Inside the bubble, he wrote in shaky handwriting, "Why?" Beneath the stick figure, he drew a small, slightly off-kilter rendering of his missing chime. Maya studied the drawing. Perfect, simple, direct, and endearingly awkward. She saved the image and then printed it out on a small sheet of paper. Together, they walked to Toby's room, the air thick with anticipation and a lingering sense of dread. Toby carefully placed the note on his bedside table, weighing it down with a small paperweight. As they left the room, Maya clapped Toby on the back. "Okay, Operation Paranormal Postman is officially underway. Now we wait." Toby swallowed hard, his throat dry. Waiting was the hardest part. He glanced back at his room, at the small white rectangle on his bedside table, a beacon of hope and a chilling invitation in the darkness to come, the cold truth. Sleep remained a distant shore. Toby thrashed against the sheets, the past week's events a relentless skipping track in his head. Every groan of the timbers, each whisper of leaves against the glass, sent icy tendrils snaking across his skin. He pressed his eyelids together, desperate for the arrival of morning, praying for an end to this ordeal. Finally, a pale line appeared at the edge of the curtains, heralding the dawn. He remained motionless, a weight of apprehension settling deep in his gut. Opening his eyes felt like a monumental task, facing the unknown more daunting still. But Maya was expected, and he wouldn't abandon her. Summoning his resolve, he sat up, swinging his legs to the floor. The wood felt strangely frigid under his feet. He moved toward the spot where the note and drawing had been placed. Only the paper was missing. A jolt of panic seized him. Instead, a rough, gray stone occupied the center of the floor. Next to it, a fresh scrap of paper had appeared. With unsteady hands, he reached for it. "Don't touch. We need to document." Maya's voice pierced the silence. She stood in the doorway, her gaze a mixture of eagerness and trepidation. Snapping a photo with her phone, she preserved the image of the stone and the note. Ignoring her caution, Toby snatched the paper. A single word was etched upon it in the same wavering, almost childlike script as before. "Cold." He showed it to Maya, whose initial fervor waned, replaced by a pensive expression. "Cold? What's that supposed to signify?" Toby offered a helpless shrug, a pit forming in his stomach. "Maybe just that it's cold. In here?" Maya dismissed the idea with a shake of her head. "It's not as simple as the temperature, Toby. Think deeper. Why a stone? Stones are dispassionate, unfeeling." She picked up the object, scrutinizing it. It's like it's trying to communicate something about its nature. They contemplated the solitary word, hanging heavy in the air. Toby shivered, not entirely from the room's chill. A profound disquiet settled over him, a creeping dread that transcended mere fear. "What if," Maya began softly, her voice barely audible, "what if it's lonely?" The notion struck Toby with startling force. Lonely. He conjured the image of the shadowy figure from the photograph, eternally confined to his room, reaching out, craving something, warmth, companionship. "That's insane, right?" he stammered, his voice cracking with disbelief. "It's a ghost or whatever. They can't be lonely." Maya didn't respond, her focus unwavering on the stone in her grasp. "Consider it, Toby. It's perpetually here in your room. It tucks you in, takes your chime. Perhaps it's not attempting to frighten you. Perhaps it's simply longing for connection." The concept was deeply unnerving, deeply unsettling. It was far easier to categorize the entity as a monster, a spiteful force intent on his suffering, but the word cold echoed in his mind, painting a different portrait, a more intricate and ultimately more terrifying one. "But why me?" Toby blurted out, the question tumbling from his lips before he could restrain it. "Why is this happening to me?" Maya sighed, her expression laced with weariness. "I don't know, Toby. Perhaps you're reminded of someone. Perhaps your room possesses some type of lingering energy that attracts it. We simply don't have the answers yet." His gaze swept across his room, suddenly perceiving it in a new and disquieting light. It was more than a refuge, a sanctuary. It was a prison, a cage containing someone, something lost and utterly isolated. The realization sent shivers down his spine. He yearned to flee, to escape this nightmare, to abandon it all. But he was trapped, bound to this specter by an unseen, unbreakable thread. "So, what do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya met his gaze, her expression hardening. "We attempt to understand it. We endeavor to decipher its desires. And then," she added, her voice steely, "we determine how to help it, or how to banish it for good. A friend from another realm." Cold, the word declared in chalk across Toby's wall, a ghostly residue clinging to the shadows. More than just the bite of autumn leaking through aged window panes, an inner frigidity gripped him, mirroring what felt like the entity's profound isolation. "So," Maya ventured, her voice a gentle ripple in the silence, "try radiating some warmth." He nodded slowly, the notion simultaneously ludicrous and strangely appealing. "Yeah, warmth it is." They descended the stairs, embarking on a clandestine expedition to the linen closet. A sharp twinge of guilt nipped at Toby as he unearthed his grandmother's cherished quilt, a vibrant tapestry usually reserved for anniversaries and holidays. Its intricate weave of cerulean and emerald threads spoke of affection and solace, a stark counterpoint to the gelid presence infesting his room. "Suitable?" he questioned, displaying the quilt. Maya stroked the plush fabric. "Perfect, downright inviting." Next, they unearthed a crescent moon nightlight, a petite beacon of amber light intended to push back the deepening gloom. Back in Toby's room, they carefully unfurled the quilt at the bed's edge, allowing a corner to cascade onto the floor like a votive offering. The nightlight took its post by the door, its gentle radiance struggling against the shadows nesting in the room's recesses. "Think this will work?" Toby murmured, anxiety tightening his vocal cords. Maya squeezed his hand reassuringly. "We have to try, right?" "It's preferable to," yielding to the chill. He lay rigid in bed, the familiar tendrils of dread coiling around him. Every groan of the house, each susurrus of leaves against the glass, sent icy prickles down his spine. His gaze remained riveted to the faint glow emanating from the nightlight, a fragile bastion against the encroaching darkness. Sleep remained an elusive phantom. He thrashed, the shadowy form seared onto his inner eye. Was it observing him even now? Was it amused by their awkward overtures? Or was it, as Maya posited, simply alone? At last, exhaustion dragged him under. His dreams were a swirl of snow-swept vistas and razor winds, yet punctuated by the image of a distant candle, a promise of sanctuary and heat. He bolted awake, the room bathed in weak morning light. He sat upright, heart hammering, steeling himself for the worst. But everything appeared ordinary, almost suspiciously so. Then he spotted it. The quilt, cast carelessly at the foot of the bed the night before, was now folded meticulously on the chair, a precise stack of azure and verdant hues. and the nightlight, which he was certain he had left illuminated, was now extinguished. Paralyzed, he didn't stir. He sensed Maya shift beside him, also registering the anomalous scene. "Toby?" she whispered, her voice a mere breath. He gestured mutely towards the chair, his throat constricted. Her eyes widened. With cautious steps, she approached the neatly arranged quilt. It folded it? He nodded mutely, a bizarre cocktail of trepidation and wonder bubbling inside him. Was this a message, gratitude, or something else entirely unfathomable? Slowly, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, his bare feet encountering the frigid floor. He felt an inexplicable urge to peer beneath the bed. Kneeling, he squinted into the inky blackness, and there it was, a miniature, hand-hewn figurine. Roughly carved, it unmistakably depicted a human form. Barely 3 inches tall, its features were rudimentary and blocky, yet its stance radiated a sense of tranquility, or perhaps even contentment. The wood was sleek and cool against his skin. He lifted it, turning it over in his palms. A strange sense of recognition washed over him, as if he had encountered it before, perhaps in the landscape of a dream. He met Maya's gaze, his own wide with incredulity. It left me a token." Maya accepted the figure, scrutinizing it. "It's a companion." Toby stared at the wooden effigy, a tidal surge of emotion engulfing him. Fear, undeniably, but also something more. Something akin to optimism. He had extended a hand into the abyss, and something had reciprocated. Perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't confronting a malevolent entity. Perhaps he had gained an ally from a realm beyond human comprehension.